buying seeds and buying starters to invest in the Mother Earth. And we came back, and my friend had brought some horse manure to our garden. And that's how they're a true friend, when they bring you horse manure, so that your soil can be even more fertile. And we were turning the soil with the broad forks and the hoe, and just having a good time. And mashallah, I mentioned to him that I had heard from a friend of mine who's Native American from the nation, that before they plant, he told me, before you start planting, you should say a prayer. Yeah, say a prayer and ask for permission. Right? Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for permission to begin cutting into your mother, because when you dig, you're actually disrupting the skin of your Mother Earth. And he said, you should also ask permission from Mother Earth, from your mother, before you dig, before you scrape, before you scratch her skin, the soil. And so we did that, right? We made a dua. We asked Allah Ta'ala for permission to plant, and we asked Allah to bless what we plant, and we asked permission from the earth. And it was really interesting, because there is a hadith where Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he would see the new moon, the crescent moon rather, when he would see the crescent moon, he would speak to it, and he would say, Allahumma ahillahu alayna bil yumni wal iman was salamati wal islam rabbuna wa rabbuka Allah. He would say, oh Allah, cause this crescent to rise upon us with safety and faith, with peace, with freedom from hardship, and surrender, loving surrender and acceptance of you. And then he would look at the moon, and he would say, our nurturing master, our Rabb, and your Rabb, and your nurturing master is Allah. And I always found it curious that the Prophet ﷺ was speaking to the moon, right? And not only that, he was reminding the moon that my Lord and your Lord is Allah, right? And so I didn't find it strange to speak to the earth and ask for permission and remind it that our Lord and your Lord is Allah. And I said the same thing that we say when we cut the throat of the Qurbani or the Udhiyah, Bismillah, Wallahu Akbar, as we were cutting into the soil, again, seeking permission from Allah Ta'ala. And so the first thing, and I guess the first dot I wanted to connect in the short message I have today, is developing an awareness that this earth that we are living on, that we walk on, that we work on, that we work with, is alive. That the moon and the sun, the heavens, they're alive. The animals are alive. They're not inanimate and lacking consciousness. We know this from the Quran, don't we? Right? Many of you are aware that Allah says, everything in the heavens and the earth declares the transcendence, declares the divine, the absolute divine perfection of Allah. Everything in the heavens and the earth declares, proclaims that Allah has no imperfections, no deficiencies. Allah has absolutely no attributes that are changeable and confined by time and space. This is what tasbih means. يُسَبِّحُ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Everything in the heavens and the earth is and will declare the transcendence of the divine. We know this. And how can the creatures in the heavens and the earth, those that we consider animate and inanimate, how can they make tasbih if they don't have some degree of consciousness? Now, I'm not saying they have the same level of consciousness as an awakened human being who's awakened to the truth of God's existence and God's knowledge and power and wisdom, and who's awakened to their own human worth, their own value as the Khalifa of Allah, right? As the vicegerent, as the trustee of God, the steward of God's creation. What is the purpose of the Khalifa? Right? These are called Khalifa Conversations. What is the purpose of the Khalifa? When you read the Quran this Ramadan, look for every ayah where the word Khalifa or Khulafa, the plural, is mentioned. And you'll find a common thread that the Khalifa is one who is given a great amana, a great trust, a great responsibility. You'll find that the Khalifa is the one who's responsible for cultivation, who's responsible for civilization, for building, for erecting. The Khalifa is responsible for establishing balance and justice and harmony in the creation. The Khalifa is responsible for bringing order and maintaining that mizan, that balance that Allah established, that He informs us about in Surah Al-Rahman. And to not transgress that balance. That's what we're doing. That's what Corey was inviting us to do with making sure that our iftars in Ramadan don't harm the environment. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, "La darar wa la dirar." Let there be no harming and no reciprocating harm. This needs to start with not harming our own selves. This needs to start with not harming our Mother Earth. The earth is alive. The earth is aware. Allah even says in the Quran, Surah Al-Zilzala, in the chapter of the shaking or the quaking, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إذا زلزلت الأرض زلزالها وأخرجت الأرض أثقالها وقال الإنسان ما لها يومئذ تحدث أخبارها بأن ربك أوحى لها. Allah says, and when the earth quakes the quaking, and when and then when Allah brings out of the earth it's her burdens, and when the human being says, what is it with her? What is wrong with her? On that day, she will tell her stories. تحدث أخبارها. On that day, she will share her stories. The earth has many stories to tell. بأن ربك أوحى لها. With that which her Rabb, right? Remember we talked about the Prophet ﷺ saying that the moon has the same master as he does. And now Allah says the moon, the earth will speak, will share its stories based on what Allah inspires her with, based on what Allah reveals to her. If the earth wasn't alive, if the earth wasn't conscious, how could she rather receive revelation? How could she receive inspiration from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The earth is alive. We should treat the earth like she's alive. In all of the efforts that you are making in Green Muslims and Green Ramadan are to honor this, right? To honor this reality, this truth. But we need to do more than just, recycle, reduce, and reuse. Right? This is my main message today, and that's why I asked that we title this "Beyond Greening the Deen." right? A brother who I respect and admire tremendously, Ibrahim Abdul Mateen, wrote a book that we should all own and we should all read and we should all study and discuss. It's called Green Deen, right? And the book was so uh, seminal and so groundbreaking. He was interviewed on CNN for his work. But we need to do more. And in his book, he elaborates and expounds of that, you know, greening the Deen, so to speak, is so much more than making sure that our own personal habits, our own family, even our institutions are not harming the earth. We need to go on the offense. We need to put pressure on our government officials. We need to lobby. We need to demonstrate. We need to make sure that our voices are heard loud and clear, brothers and sisters, that business cannot continue as usual. The COVID-19 pandemic is a testament to the fact that business cannot continue as usual. The climate, the severe weather systems that we have, the warming of the planet, climate change, according to global health experts. I was watching a TED talk a few weeks ago. I forget the name of the scientist, but she was mentioning how the warming of the planet has made an environment that's more conducive for the rapid spread of viruses like the new coronavirus. And if we don't go beyond the Paris environmental agreement, the pledges that were made at Paris, which is a good start, but it's not enough. It's not enough to bring down the temperature of the planet 1 or 2 degrees Celsius, which is what we need in the next, I think, 20 to 30 years. Not enough. We need to be much more aggressive. And we need to realize that if we don't change, thank you, 1.5 Celsius, sister. Non-affirmant, mashallah. Allahu Akbar. May Allah bless you, your family, Brother Jamal, mashallah. If we don't change, we have more pandemics to look forward to. Brothers and sisters, I don't know about you, but I don't want to live like this. I don't want to live like this. I don't want to spend Ramadan away from the masjid. I don't want to have to debate with people about whether or not we can pray Taraweeh through a Zoom conference. Is that how we want to live, really? I don't want to have to bury my friends and not be able to hug their family. I don't want to live like this. We should not accept a lackluster, mediocre movement in our masajid. We need to use every legal, every halal, and wise method to change the status quo for the better. But I'm telling you, this has to be more about, and this has to be about more than just policy change. This has to be about more than, again, reducing, recycling, reusing. You and I need to add another R to that trinity. We need to add relationship. We need a relationship with the planet. We need a real relationship with the planet. And well, you might ask, well, what do you mean relationship with the planet? You know, this sounds kind of abstract, or maybe you might think it sounds kind of new age or hippie or whatever, or Sufi or what, I don't know. The Prophet ﷺ, he had a relationship with the planet. He had a relationship with every animal, every stone that he passed by. He had a relationship with the Mount Uhud. right? Those of you who've read the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, read his biography, those of you who've made Hajj or Umrah, who've made the pilgrimage and you've visited Makkah and Medina, you've heard, I'm sure you heard the hadith that when your guide took you to Uhud, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to the mountain, which is part of the earth, indeed, this is a mountain that loves us and we love it. He had a relationship. You don't have love if there's no relationship. Love only happens between a human and a mountain, or between the Prophet ﷺ, a human, and that tree trunk that cried because he moved his pulpit just a few inches away. Unless there's a connection between my heart and the heart of the mountain, between my heart and the heart of the trunk of that tree, between my heart and the heart of the planet. So that's the first thing I want to really encourage you and I to do, is cultivate a relationship with Mother Earth. Serve Mother Earth. Al-Jannah inda aqdam al-ummahat. Paradise, the garden, the Prophet ﷺ said, garden is at the feet of the mothers. How would you treat your mother? That's how you should treat the earth. Cultivate a relationship. This is more than just about saving the planet. Actually, you can't save the planet. When people say save the planet, what they're really talking about is saving human existence on the planet. We will destroy ourselves before we could destroy this planet. May Allah protect us from that. May Allah protect us from that. And you know what? If that happened, and I pray it does not happen, I pray that we wake up, that we hear the alarm. And you know what, brothers and sisters, there's no snooze button with this alarm. Right? There's no snooze button. If we don't change, again, one of my Native American friends said, if we don't change, a change will come that is bigger than all of us. And what we're experiencing now is just a taste. And I'd hate to be a harbinger of, of warning, but we need a warning. We need a warning right now. We need to heed the warning. This is a warning. So we need to cultivate a relationship. Also, with that relationship, you'll start to hear. If you pay attention to the earth, and I know some of you already, I'm sure, already know what I'm talking about. The earth will speak to you. It'll be a feeling, it might be a quiet voice inside your heart that you hear. She'll tell you what to do, how to treat her, how to plant, how to grow, how to cultivate, what to do, what not to do. The plants will talk to you, just like that great African-American agricultural scientist and inventor and mystic, sage, George Washington Carver used to say in his memoirs that when I walk through the woods, I recognize that the forest is one giant broadcasting station for God. And he said, if you spend enough time with anything, if you give anything your time and attention, it will eventually give up its secrets to you. And he said, I have found this to be the case with the plants that I work with. And he was so much more than the peanut man, the peanut guy. He did so much more than come up with 300 different ways to use the peanut. That was just the tip of the iceberg of his work as a scientist, as a painter, as an inventor, as an educator, so on and so forth, as a builder of institutions, as a mentor. And he said, I found that to be the case with the plants that I work with, and I found that to be the case with human beings. And so apply the same principle that George Washington Carver applied in his work to your work with the planet. Give it your time and give it your attention, and she will tell you her stories. She will tell you her stories, brothers and sisters. That's not just for the Day of Judgment. She'll tell you her stories right now. She'll tell you her secrets right now. And so in conclusion, I just want to touch on nuclear non-proliferation, artificial intelligence, and the peace imperative. The Prophet ﷺ, he charged the Muslims, the early Muslims in Medina. One of the first sermons he gave that was heard by the likes of the great Abdullah ibn Salam, radiallahu anhu, may Allah be pleased with him, who was a Jewish rabbi who embraced Islam at the hands of Prophet Muhammad in Medina. He said, the first thing that I heard the Prophet say was, Ifsha'u salam, spread peace. That's the first principle, brothers and sisters, spread peace. Ifsha'u salam wa at'imu ta'am. Wasilu bil arham, wasalu bil layli wa nasu niyam. Tadkhulu jannah bis salam. Spread peace. Feed food. Share food. Share food. Honor or honor the homes. And I prefer actually to translate this literally, even though I know usually Muslims translate it figuratively, which is correct. Idiomatically, it is correct that silatu raham, it means to honor your kinship ties, your relatives. But what you're literally saying is connect the womb, connect to the uterus, meaning those relationships that you're connected with through the womb that bore you, you should honor. And the raham, the Prophet Muhammad said, the uterus or the womb of the woman, the primordial womb, and some scholars even extend the womb to the planet Earth, and some scholars even extend the womb to the cosmos, al-kawn, to the universe. The womb, the Prophet ﷺ said, is attached to the arsh of Allah, is attached to the throne of Allah. And every woman and every female, every feminine has a share of that ontological, cosmological inheritance and truth. You just have to discover it in yourselves, my sisters. You just have to connect with your mother. You just have to connect with the sun, which is feminine in Arabic. You have to connect with the moon, with which your own biological rhythms are tied to. Living a simple and sacred, natural life helps you to unfold that wealth that no one can take from you. And then he said, and pray at night while people are asleep. In the depth of the night. And the night is another kind of womb. Right? Is another lecture. We'll talk about that another time.
It is so very hard to stop you, Imam Mendes. That was absolutely beautiful. I'm afraid if we're going to get any questions and answers in.
So let me do this. And he said, you will experience, you will enter, and I use the word experience because that entering of paradise in peace is something that can happen in this life, or it can happen in the next life. So what connects the dots between the nuclear non-proliferation, the work that we should be doing as Muslims, again, to preserve our lives as human beings on this planet, working for nuclear disarmament, working against the weaponization of artificial intelligence and its use for surveillance against citizens, and it's working against the autonomy of artificial intelligence, and our work as agents of peace and forces for peace needs to be coupled. It needs to be in tandem with our work on climate change, because they're all ultimately about establishing peace first and foremost in our hearts, or I would say at the same time, because we don't have the luxury to do one before the other. We need to cultivate peace in our hearts, in our homes, in our communities, and ultimately in our countries, in our nation. And all of these are connected with this. And so with that, forgive me for being long. This is something I care a lot about, and I could literally go on for hours, inshallah, talking about this. But I don't think there's anything more important. And so many of the problems that we're facing as Muslims, as Americans, and particularly as an African American, and I look at the African American community, I look at Latino communities, Native American communities, so many of the problems that we face would be remedied if we focused on activism and dua and worship that serves these causes. And with that, I ask that you forgive me for being long, forgive me for any mistakes I made, and I look forward to hearing from you. Jazakumullah khairan. Allah bless you. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khairan, Imam, for that wonderful talk. As I mentioned, I didn't want to cut you off, but we do want to have some time for some questions. We can try.
I'm happy.
Excellent, excellent. Please feel free, everyone, to just write your questions in the chat box, and I can ask them. Corey, do you think we should try to do any video questions, or shall I just start reading what I've got?
Just read what you've got, yeah.
First question, can you please speak to the importance of our community divesting from fossil fuels?
It's of the utmost importance, and mashallah, I saw that question from my beloved brother Colin Christopher, and he and I, along with Dr. Mariam Hussein from Imana, the Islamic Medical Association of North America, gave a webinar 2 Fridays ago where this was highlighted. It's absolutely imperative that Muslims work and campaign for the divestment of our institutions, our endowments, our personal
I think we lost him. Let's see if he comes back on. There was one other question that came up that I would actually like to say something about, although I'm sure Imam Mendes has much more to say. Someone asked about the easiest way to cultivate this relationship with the earth. This is what I actually spoke about last week, because this is my personal passion. I think I told a story going up, raised Muslim community. The earth is with Allah. So excited, Imam Mendes. Well, I heard him. Oh, I'm seeing that my connection is not very stable right now either. So let's see what happens. But I've heard him mention something that I had thought about ago, but was too scared to speak about in the entire community. And that's that the earth is one of Allah's books, and that we can learn about our creator through this creation. And I also like to point out that there are signs. There are signs of Allah in the earth, including from the 99 names specifically. So if you want to take it as a direct connection to our Deen, looking at the 99 names and looking for those signs in the planet is one of my key recommendations. But he also talked about how the earth will speak to you if you listen. So just going out and reflecting on your faith, being quiet in the forest, I think is the ideal way to find that connection, although it works differently for different people. Shall I just,
Exactly.
are you back?
I'm back. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So sorry, I spoke too long then because there are
No,
many more
no,
questions, but please add to it.
no. There's nothing really to add. Just give. So, give to the earth. Whatever you take away, give back. Uh, you know, that's just it's about reciprocity. It's about dialogue with the planet. Pray for the earth. Give gifts to the earth. The gift of your prayer. Recite Al-Fatiha for the earth. Why not? Why not? You know. And everything you said, sisters Savem, was on point. So I would just say, like you said, listen, walk barefoot on the earth, work with the earth, sit on the earth, lie on the earth, develop a relationship, spend time, and just listen, and don't second guess yourself.
Excellent, thank you. Great questions are coming in. Let's make the next one. How can we activate more imams into green and the climate issue? Nana asked this. So Nana, would you please contact me afterwards? Because I know of a West Coast group that's trying to educate our imams, and I will be talking with Imam Mendes about this as well. But please let us know what you think as well, Imam.
Well, I would say that, there are certain influencers. This is I think it's called the snowflake model of organizing. There are a number of leaders and influencers among imams and organizations. You start with those organizations and those imams, and you bring them up to speed on the data, on the work that needs to be done, on what's at stake, without emotion. Just show them, this is why our Deen makes this a priority, and what we have to lose. And what we have to lose is our health, and all of the maqasid of the Sharia. You can't, all the aims and objectives of sacred law, you cannot realize them if you don't have a planet to live on. So I would organize them. Imams love to be taken. Love, if they can spare, they love to be wined, halal, in the halal sense. They love to be wined and dined, so to speak. Of course, not wine, but given chide and dined, I guess. And educate them, inshallah. Educate them and give them marching orders, give them a green khutbah template, for example, that they can add to, but there are certain key points that are there. And I think, again, I like what's happening with Yaqeen Institute and Dr. Ingrid Mattson. Also, she's been working on this issue for quite a bit. So I'm very happy to see the progress, but we need so much more, and we don't have time. What a lot of imams think is we have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. We don't. We don't.
Excellent. There's some really great questions coming in. So let's move on. What is your perspective about vegan lifestyle in Islam?
Being a vegan is permissible. I think that certain aspects of veganism are a bit extreme for me. For example, not eating honey. I think that's an issue. Not drinking, raw milk, for example, if it's safe to drink. I think that, that's why I'm not a vegan. I'm kind of semi-vegetarian, I would say 80-90% vegetarian most of the time. But I live in a Desi community, so it's hard to be vegetarian. But I think from an ethical and a spiritual standpoint, there are clear benefits. Clear benefits. Just don't be a vegan or a vegetarian and act like an animal, right? So you want your diet to also reflect your character, right? You want your character to reflect your diet. And so sometimes you see people that are vegan or vegetarian, not necessarily Muslims, but there's a kind of an air sometimes of self-righteousness that just happens when people can make those kind of sacrifices and identify with them. But I think it's healthier. I don't think anyone would deny, as long as you're getting your vitamins and your proteins from good sources. I think it's much healthier, and I I think a vegetarian lifestyle is a lot closer to the Prophet ﷺ's diet than the current Muslim diet, where we eat meat 3 times a day, 2 to 3 times a day. So yeah, the Prophet ﷺ was not a vegan. He was not a vegetarian, ﷺ. But again, I think the vegetarian lifestyle is a lot closer to his diet, ﷺ.
We are almost out of time right now, but the next question on the list captures my attention.
Mhm.
So if you don't mind, Imam, someone is asking about the difference between dunya and earth. I
Yeah.
love that question.
Yeah, so the dunya is anything material that distracts you from Allah. The word dunya literally means that which is low, that which is near. Dana yadnu, right? That's the verb. And so that's what the dunya is. It's anything that's material or physical that distracts you from Allah. Whereas the earth is full of signs, full of Allah's signs. إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. Allah says, indeed, in the creation, the structure of the heavens and the earth, and in the night, the changing of night and day are signs, are messages, are proofs for people who possess innermost heart. And so that's the difference. The earth is positive. It's innately positive. Whereas dunya is the veil of the material life, the attachment to material things that distracts us from Allah and is therefore negative.
Jazakallah khairan, that was a great answer. And I wish I could have given that years ago as well. Everybody, thank you so much. I'm sorry to cut off the questions, but maybe Imam Mendes can get back to some of you on them. I wanted to point out that there's a lot of information on the Green Muslims and Green Ramadan websites about things that you can do this Ramadan to make it a bit more earth-friendly and healthy. So please check out our websites. It's just greenmuslims.org and greenramadan.com. And I hope that everybody will continue to join us weekly. It would be wonderful if Imam Mendes could come back. But we know that we're definitely going to have to plan more events with him in the future, inshallah. So thank you all so much for participating, and we hope to see you all next week. Oh my goodness, Ramadan Mubarak to everyone. Happy Earth Day.
Inshallah, inshallah. Ramadan Mubarak in advance. Happy Earth Day. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa iyyakum. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for joining.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. Happy Earth Day.
Assalamualaikum,
Ramadan
Nana.
Mubarak.
Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.
Alhamdulillah.
Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum. Thank you.
How did inshallah. Assalamualaikum. Take care.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamualaikum.